This week on Rockstar Superhero. Speaking to Sacha Laskow today, I was reminded how much the music business has left me behind. With new electronic modules, software, and miles of talent, the internet has allowed the very best musicians in the world to connect with their peers, creating wildly ambitious music of the highest caliber. Sacha's band, if you were to call it that, the mighty Every Hour Kills, is an amalgam of this brave new world. Sacha's music speaks because it feels new, fresh, dangerous, and different. He's connected with some of the musical champions of the heavy music world to collaborate, and the result is technically ferocious and stunning. Call it what you will, Every Hour Kills does just that. The music weaves, pushes, pulls, and ultimately challenges you to a tightrope walk across the windiest gully. You'll be glad when it's over, but you'll want to do it all over again. This is my interview with the musical scientist, Sacha Laskow. This is Every Hour Kills on the Rockstar Superhero Podcast. Personally, I prefer music that challenges me. And I've found over the years that my taste is definitely sorted to finally lean towards the heavier side, but I still require melody in my music. And when I talk about challenging, it's not necessarily just lots of notes for the sake of notes. Those notes, they have to mean something. And your music completely floored me. And this is not an exaggeration. There was something in it from ground zero that connected with me that was really rare. And I think it's because somehow, and this sounds really cheesy, but my spiritual nature connected with what you were trying to achieve or trying to say. I mean, I just felt it in my gut, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And anyway, I lost my mind. I mean, I flat out lost my mind. So here we are. And again, I wanted to just thank you for being here this morning, and I couldn't be more thrilled.
Well, thank you, man. That's awesome. I really appreciate you saying that, and glad it could connect with you.
Yeah, it did. It did. In fact, so much so that I've been waking up the past few mornings with your material in my head. Now, granted, I'm a drummer, so I get stuck with earworms all the time, right? But yeah, the catchier melodic parts of your music, because it goes through so many twists and turns, they really stand out because of the aggression in it. And so you're doing something right, brother.
Awesome. Thanks. Good to hear.
Yeah. Look, I'm assuming from everything I've read about you, that you do all the songwriting and the programming, correct?
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of my baby. When we started the project, it was me and a drummer that I'd known for a long time in the scene here, and we actually kind of wanted to work together for a long time and wanted to make the band live, but that was only the first EP that had live drums, and then it kind of became an internet project from there, where I started working with all the collaborators from different bands and all over the world, and so the drums are programmed by myself from that point.
Yeah. I mean, the programming is done so well. I mean, granted, the technology today leaps and bounds over anything we've ever experienced before, but your programming, this is something I really wanted to touch on today, because as a drummer, I'm listening to that stuff and I'm saying, is that technically possible? right? Could a live drummer pull that off? And the answer is yes. And I think that's what's so smart about it. It feels real. And it's not like you're saying, look how many 64th notes we can put in to this particular bar, right? Or create a pattern that's impossible to replicate. But I'm curious, because you do everything from a synthetic point of view now, is your intention to ever do this material live?
Probably not. I mean, never say never, but it's not something I'm really super interested right now. I've kind of been there, done that. I've toured and done the whole band thing.
Yeah.
But I've also programmed for a long time. Like, I've programmed drums forever. That's kind of what got me into production in the first place was I got like a shitty drum machine, and I had a cassette 4-track back then. But just hearing a song that I wrote with all the parts playing back was so amazing, right? Like, the technology that I could sort of compose all the parts and bring it to life in my bedroom or whatever was so empowering and felt so amazing. So that's kind of where my journey with programming began. And but I also play drums a bit, so that's probably why it's not like super unrealistic. Like guitar is my main instrument, but I do dabble in drums and bass and vocals as well. So keeping it realistic was part of the idea, and I use real performances in the programming. Like, there's, you can buy libraries of like MIDI beats that various drummers have played on electronic kit. So I use a lot of that, and I'll take that as like a starting point and then modify it to match what I'm playing, and that makes it a lot more realistic.
Yeah, that's cool, dude. I haven't actually done any of that work myself, so I'm curious. Do those beats come in fully quantized, or do they have a human factor in them?
Yeah, no, that's the whole kind of advantage of using those kinds of tools, is that they have a bit of variation in the timing and a bit of variation in like the velocity of how hard they're hitting things. Like when someone hits a crash on the quarter notes, they're not just slamming it full every hit, right? As you would probably know, if you're a drummer, you've got like a leading hit at like an accent, and then a lighter hit in between and an accent. And so it's there's all that variation in a performance, and that's what makes it just breathe and feel more alive.
Yeah, that's so cool. When it comes to collaborators, I know you've worked with a lot of guys over the years, and obviously some very well-known musicians. We could probably list all of those if we wanted to. But that being said, how does that happen for you? Meaning, do the collaborators come to you and say, "Hey, we love what you're creating"? Are you always reaching out and saying, "I've kind of written this song with you in mind"? How does that work?
Yeah, no, that'd be nice if they were coming to me, but
maybe they will be. Holy crap.
That's not usually the way it goes. No, usually I just kind of make a list of artists that I respect, and, whatever stuff I'm listening to at the time, and kind of think about parts or songs where those people could fit in. And then I just reach out. Yeah, I just reach out, like whatever contact information through social media or email or whatever I might have. I'll just hit them up, and I'll wait till I'm pretty far along so that I have something cool to show, like the song's pretty well like sounding good, like it's not like a shitty demo or anything.
Right.
So that, hopefully that'll capture their imagination a little more. So once the songs are pretty far along, I'll start sending them out, and obviously I will offer to pay. That's a good way to get a response.
Sure.
because nobody wants to work for free. So, I'll make sure that I mention that I'm willing to pay like a professional kind of arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times people don't get back to me, or they say that they're just busy and don't have time or whatever. But a lot of times they're into it, so that's when it works out.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic stuff. I mean, I would actually love to have your music playing in the background right now while we're talking, just so I can start referencing parts. But are you familiar with a Swedish songwriter? I don't remember his name, to be honest, but the band goes by Jupiter Society.
No, not familiar with that band. No.
Okay. Well, imagine if David Bowie did like Pink Floyd progressive space rock. It's pretty cool. Very heavy, but brooding and slow and super melodic. It's really rad. But here's the point behind that. Like him, you bring your ideas right to the forefront. You lay them out. You clearly sculpt and craft. You might bring in a few session guys, great musicians from your sphere, but it's your idea to take to the world. And from what I can tell from your music, and pardon me if I'm incorrect, but it's sort of a deal with this perspective, right? Which I really honor and love, because there's a combination of playfulness and aggression in what you've created. And I'm wondering if you're the guy that drops music on people to challenge them, or maybe even alienate them. Are you a guy that says, this is me, deal with me, I don't compromise?
Yeah, I would say yes and no. Like, I don't create things to try and provoke a reaction from other people.
Cool.
I just do what feels right to me, without considering if people will necessarily like it or not. So obviously it's great when people like what you do, and that's a nice feeling, but I don't think writing music from worrying about how people are going to react to it is really a true representation of my expression.
Yeah.
So, and that's why we have the kind of dichotomy between the most recent EP, which is really heavy and death metal almost, which is part of my influences, but wasn't really part of Every Hour Kills before. But it's still part of like my musical heritage and my influences, and it just felt right with all the things going on in the world that we all know about. It just felt right to take it in a heavy direction, and I knew a lot of people probably wouldn't be into it, and especially the people that were into the band based on the clean vocals and the melodies and stuff like that, which is what it was focused on before. Right. But in the end, I could have changed the name and started a new project, but I was just like, fuck it. This is my project. This is my playground. I'm going to just do what I want. And like, if people don't like this one, maybe they'll like the next one. Yeah.
No, I get that. I would tell you that, are you familiar with Jørgen Munkeby from Shining, Norway?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So Jørgen and I, this sounds like I'm star fucking right now. It's not true. He's just somebody I really like. I admire. We've talked a number of times. I mean, we've become kind of close, but the point being is this: he's a total, as you know, he's a fuck it, deal with the consequences type of musician. He's all about the art first, and if he gets an idea, and he might work with a small collaborative group, he might do it all by himself. Who knows? But he forces his fan base, to digest it. And if it's painful, so be it. And if he loses fans over it, so be it, because he's found that what matters is the artistry, and what matters is the current direction, because it's all part of his long game, part of his life process as an artist. And it seems to me that your artistry and your musicianship sort of bears the earmarks of that kind of thinking, that it's not a screw it, you guys suck, I'm going to do what I want to do. But it is saying, hey, follow me. I'm going down a cool path. Am I kind of on the right path with you on that?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, exactly. And, there's a few facets to that. Like, number one is being honest and authentic.
Yeah.
And so, not censoring myself. Like, you can limit yourself creatively if that's part of what you want to do for a certain project or whatever, but I don't want to limit myself artistically or emotionally to say I'm beholden to a certain style.
Yeah.
So, and luckily, that's one of the nice things about being an underground artist that's not super famous, or I'm not signed. I'm not like beholden to any business interests where, this is my living and I'm jeopardizing my putting food on the table or anything like that.
Yeah.
Which can definitely handcuff artists too, I think, when they have to worry about that. And I don't have to worry about that. Like, I have a job that pays my bills and they don't give a shit what kind of music I make. So
do you have to, when I was a kid, I was trying to quote unquote be famous, right? This is in the early to mid 80s. And our whole joke back then was you had to get a job working at a restaurant and you had to be in the back because you had long hair and you had tattoos and all those things. You couldn't be in the public eye. You know what I mean? And I don't want to get personal with you in regards to your life or, what's going on, but do you do your work online? Do you have a business you go to?
Well, it's remote work right now. I work in the technology,
of course,
software company. So it's I was actually remote before COVID hit as well, but now it's fully remote. So, but I can clean up nice. I don't have long hair or anything anymore.
No, you're a good looking guy. You're cool.
Yeah, I can throw on a collared shirt, whatever.
Yeah. So then for you, because, so one, you live in north central Canada. It's cold and it's dark half of the year. You're a solo artist in a lot of ways. You live your life remotely as a, work based. How do you think that translates into what you create? Because first of all, I want to know what every hour kills actually means to you, if you don't mind sharing. But you know what I mean? How does this all translate? Because I almost feel like, and I'm not pigeonholing you, but I almost feel like the kind of music you create, when I listen to it, knowing these things about you, I go, well, yeah, of course he's going to make stuff like that. He's on his own a lot. Yeah.
I think that's a vibe you get from places like this, like that. Like Sweden is another place that's kind of, or the Nordic countries that are cold a lot, and people just stay home and work on dark music in their basements or whatever. And I think Canada's got a great scene for that as well. There's obviously a lot of great progressive metal and death metal coming out of Canada. And I think everyone's a product of their environment and their upbringing to a certain degree. And I think a lot of artists are also introverts, right? Like we get energy from being alone and just doing our own thing. And that's my happy place, is in my dark room here with my big computer screen and all my gear and just making stuff. There's nowhere else I'd rather be.
Yeah. All that blue light's going to make you blind too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So going back one step here, music clearly evolves. It has no choice, right? Nobody's playing music like the 60s. Nothing sounds like the 60s and 70s anymore. Everything's been pushed. Music is, for the most part, highly compressed nowadays. It's loud. And as listeners, we get numb. We always need a new drug, and we need a better drug. We actually, and a lot of times, especially in metal, we need a more dangerous drug, if there's such a thing, right? Because metal it's not the new wave of British metal anymore. It's not galloping Iron Maiden and I don't know, Judas Priest, right? It's not vanilla. Is there such a thing as an every hour kills subgenre? How would you classify your music?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely progressive, I think is the umbrella that it would fit under the most, because to me that kind of is a big umbrella, right? And it allows lots of different influences to come in and play. So that's where I would place myself. And that's kind of like, there's some people that love that retro vibe, right? Like there's still new bands that come out that sound like Judas Priest, and people want that too. But I'm not one of those people. And you're probably not either. No. And I do want to progress things and see like what can we do that's just a little different. Like how can we twist things in a slightly new direction? Those are the bands that I listen to and that I'm influenced by, and I'm always looking for like new cutting edge things and bands that are experimenting, and not to like the nth degree to like an avant-garde. Like I don't really get into stuff like that, like where it's, super noisy or like nonsensical from a song structure. Like there's still some structure and some melody that I like, but kind of just finding those little new paths to explore. That's what I try and do. Every record that I make is a little different.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic, man. I mean, I could seriously sit here and praise this EP. And granted, this is my first experience with you, so I can go back and listen to the other stuff and I can appreciate it, and I do enjoy it. But I admit that, is it pronounced vacua or vacua, or how's it pronounced?
Vacua, right? Yeah, okay. Like vacuum.
Yeah. It just nailed me. That artistry too. The I'm assuming it's an eyeball. It just the blood vessels. What a great conceptual look and feel. I mean, it quite literally defines what the music sounds like. The look in that artistry is something. I'm curious. So you mentioned Calgary a moment ago, or maybe you didn't, and maybe I'm thinking you did. But did you grow up there, or is that just where you make your home now?
Yeah, for the most part, I was born in Montreal, actually, on the east side. But we moved out here to Alberta when I was just like 2. So yeah, I've mostly been in Alberta, Calgary, most part.
Was I know it's a big city, kind of in the middle of nowhere, but so there's this sort of rural mindset, right? It's so isolated and stands alone. You're surrounded by the beautiful Canadian Rockies and whatnot, Lake Louise, all the things that bring tourists up to your area of the world. But growing up there, what got under your skin? Was there a certain scene? Was there a certain type of music that was typical on your local radio stations? Like what were your experiences as a kid?
Well, I was pretty fortunate that my older brother was into metal. So that's where I had my exposure to metal band and like pretty dark stuff early on. Like I was listening to like Venom and stuff as a kid. Yeah. And I never grew out of it.
Hey, Mom, come and listen to this album.
Yeah. I just love the power of it. Like the dark emotional vibe. I always felt that even before I like played an instrument or anything. I was always into that. So I never listened to the radio or anything. I mean, around here it's like country and stuff like that. But like you said, it's a decently sized city, so there's all kinds of shit. There's a scene for basically anything. There's a metal scene too. It's not huge or anything, but there is one. And so yeah, it's kind of all over the map, I guess.
Well, the reason I ask is because I'm a lot like you in this regard. I grew up, for the most part, my formative years, especially as a young musician, 8 to say 15, I lived in a very rural environment where the only thing we had was country music, except on Sunday nights we had Casey Kasem's American Top 40. And even though for the most part that was pop, at least it injected some normalcy into my world. And I mean, and at the time, to be honest, I think it's a huge component of what made me the listener I am today, which is being open to everything from what you're creating to ABBA. I can listen to all of it. Now, obviously, I favor some things over others, but it creates a diversity because you have no choice. These are your options.
Yeah.
When I listen to Vacua, the first thing outside of the wow factor is, I read your promo material. I don't know if somebody wrote it for you, if you wrote it, but you talked about being bored and frustrated and available. You know what I mean? And I hope you take this in the best way. But what I kind of heard in the subtext of how you write and the kind of music you do is I heard Devin Townsend of all things. And I don't know if there's any influence in there, but there was this experimental factor, this guy that's saying, look, I'm going to write something really aggressive, but I'm going to inject poppy catchy melodies that have no choice but to remain in your brain. And then at the same time, you've got all this deathcore that's just crushing you on the other side. And this combination of ideas is really wild to me, which again is what attracts me. So was Devin, was he a part of the puzzle of your growth?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good call. Wow. I mean, Devon's not too far away from where I live. I mean, 12-hour drive, not too far for Canada.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, no, it's like my first kind of experiences with him was when he was with Steve Vai. Mm-hmm. And because I was into like shred guitar, like Joe Satriani and Steve Vai and stuff like that back then when I was first starting to play guitar, and it just blew me away what they did on that record. So I checked out his stuff, like Strapping Young Lad City was out at the time.
Wow.
And yeah, that was a big influence on me, like blending in the kind of industrial elements, the synths and sounds and samples with like crazy death metal music, but also, like you said, had some melody and some earworms and his incredible vocals. So definitely an influence that way. I think where he differs though is that he's now sort of compartmentalized all of his projects like into different bands or different names and stuff, whereas I just throw it all in one. And I kind of like doing the way I'm doing it, where like I don't want a genre blend or a progressive element to be super jarring, where it's like, okay, this is the death metal part, this is the melodic part. Like I kind of want things to flow together and not have such stark edges, like some progressive material. So yeah, I think that's maybe where I diverge from his kind of current vibe a little bit.
Yeah, it is interesting too that you put it that way, because yeah, he does. I mean, like you said, Casualties of Cool, he's got the country thing, he's got his DTP stuff, which even though he doesn't call it anymore, it's still his DTP stuff, right? These things are clearly separated out. But I want to counter something you just said, because I know you can take it in good stride, is, for example, Tenebris. I mean, okay, so that's the first track I heard on the new EP. And I wrote down, and I mean, I'll say it again, as good Lord. it actually is all the things. I mean, this is exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to groove and melody, and then sort of surprises out of the blue. And somehow they all work together. I mean, who would have ever believed that we'd hear crazy detuned gent metalcore combined with synthwave, right? And I'm probably wrong in my genre classifications, but I mean, to me, that piece of music takes you on a journey, and it's full of surprises. And I wouldn't say that they are surprises that jar, but at the same time, because I've never heard music put together like this, I didn't expect such an extreme swing from the opening, synthwave into that very, very brutal. I don't even know what to call it, but just right. I was in a dreamscape. Now I'm in hell. Now I'm back in the dreamscape again. You know what I mean? I'm looking for Molly, basically. So when somebody tells you about their experiences, if they're like mine, one, is it far off from what you hoped you'd create, the reaction you'd get? And two, how does it feel when this music connects to somebody like me?
Yeah, no, I'm always honored to have someone connect to what I'm doing and feel it. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right but there's like multiple facets to it. Like for me as a writer, I work really hard on arrangements and transitions that make sense, that flow. Like you said, it still flows. Yeah. But that doesn't mean it should be predictable. No. So you can still have an arrangement that flows and works and makes sense without it necessarily being what you expected to happen. Yeah. So those are kind of two different concepts that I'm always, tightrope walking and towing the line, because I think songwriting is really important to me. Like I definitely used to be worse at it and do the progressive metal thing where like the parts just change, almost randomly and like slamming into a different genre and without the flow aspect to it. And it's just kind of a riff salad, if you will. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of turbulence, at least in that song. But that's, again, what drew me. And I love that you just said tightrope, because, I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, if you're on a literal tightrope, and you've got your balance bar, then your goal, right, is to walk across this sort of narrow bridge, and you're keeping an eye on the other side, but you have no choice but to walk that straight line. And those transitions are going to happen kind of no matter what. It's the wind that comes up and forces, the balance to you know what I mean? It affects the balance a bit, but it's temporary. And, I mean, I know I'm being kind of goofy here in my descriptions, but but what amazed me about that song, and for people who haven't heard it, the opening section, clean vocals, beautiful synth wave, the groove is, it's just got that groovy, natural, swingy, beat to it, that feel. And then it transitions into the heavy swing of the pre-chorus, and then it goes full out, mega aggressive, blast beats, the whole thing. And somehow it works. It shouldn't work, Sacha, and it does. And I had read in your PR materials, and perhaps it's misspelled, but it said scorecore. Mm-hmm. I've never heard that term, and I don't know. It's because I'm 55 years old. Maybe I'm an idiot. But what is that? I mean, does that have to do with being with cinema? I mean, what does that mean? Yeah, that was the idea. Is kind of the cinematic elements of it, and wow, and that a cinematic score in the same way can take you through a journey through different emotions, like a highway or whatever. We're all like metaphors here today.
Cheesy metaphors too.
Yeah, but like, so different things can be happening and different emotions, but you're still on the road. You're still going through, and it still kind of makes sense from A to B. There's still like a connection.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's so true, man. Well, I mean, so when it comes to being cinematic, do you envision as you're writing? Because when I was songwriting, I'm not trying to pour myself into your story here today, but when I was doing it, I would come up with lyrics. I would, you know what I mean, and I would build an idea in my brain about what I was writing about. Now, granted, I'm a drummer, so it's not like I was writing melodies, but the things that I was conjuring up were ideas based on a visual tapestry. It wasn't melodic at all. It was about what I was seeing in my head. How does what you're seeing in your head inspire you? I mean, do you watch something on Netflix, or you know what I mean, or do you go like, oh, I can write a song around this idea or this feeling that a movie gives me? Do you ever get inspired in that way?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's there's not one way that songs happen for me. Like it's all over the map, but I think it's important to have some kind of vision in your mind of where you're going overall. And, like you said, how the art informs and fits with how things sound. And all of that has to like fit together and create the vibe. So, I don't always get inspired like to write a certain part of a song from a visual necessarily. But I do try and have like an overall vision where all the pieces fit together and everything makes sense, and we're kind of working towards a goal that is somewhat cogent.
Yeah. I watched a couple of the videos on YouTube, and of course they're visualizers. I'm assuming you create those yourself as well?
No, I wish. I don't have any skills in the video department. So
Okay.
I work with people to help me on the visuals and the artwork and stuff like that. But there's, so many amazingly talented people out there that we collaborate and come up with something that makes sense with the whole package.
Okay. So I'm wondering if you would ever, granted you'd probably have to get the rights, but is there a movie or a scene in a movie, something that seems to couple really well with the kind of material you're currently creating? Like if I were to say, hey, Tenebris, going back to that, I'm going to require you to pick a movie or a scene to, sync that up with. What do you think it fits with?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the themes in my mind were like things about multiple realities, like time travel. Nice. So like the show Dark, if you've seen that on Netflix, stuff like that. Like sci-fi classics like Aliens and stuff like that would definitely have some vibes, some of the kind of dark, monstrous type sci-fi elements.
Yeah. I saw a movie a number of years ago called Headhunters, which I believe is Norwegian. I'm kind of obsessed with Scandinavia in general, but
same here.
Oh, have you seen this movie?
I haven't.
Oh my God. It has to be the best action film I've ever seen. I mean, above everything it is relentless. It's, people talk about Aliens and they talk about Duel, in a few movies that just kind of constantly push and never really let you up. It's just an hour and 45 minutes of pure adrenaline. It is outstanding. And, it was the first thing I thought of actually when I was listening to your song. I was like, holy crap, this should go in Headhunters. You know what I mean? It was just kaboom, constant. So check it out.
Yeah. And I mean, I think like music that I love to listen to can conjure those visuals in your head too.
Yeah.
Like when you're reading a novel and it really captures your imagination. Like music can do the same thing, and like Strapping Young Lad, you know, they do that. Or Meshuggah, like you can kind of create visuals in your mind that go along with that. And
Right.
so I'll try to have that kind of cinematic aspect to what I do too.
Yeah. You know, with the artists you work with, specifically the vocalists, how do you decide who sings on what? Is it really just simply clean singing versus harsh singing, or is there some other secret at play?
I wouldn't say I necessarily decide. Like when I collaborate with someone, I kind of want to let them do their thing and leave them space to be who they are, and just like I might have some ideas and some tweaks or whatever, some input, but I think it's important when you work with someone that you respect is to let them just do their thing and give them space. So whenever I collaborate with someone, I don't really direct them too much. I just give them the thing and say, do what you want. And then we might refine it together. But generally, I'm really stoked on what they do.
So like, who was the director of Psycho? Hitchcock. So like Hitchcock, he said, I'm hiring you, you're an actor, go act.
Exactly. Yeah. Like if you hire someone who's an artist that you respect or a professional, then that's why you hired them, because they know what they're doing and they're better than you at that thing. So
yeah.
So there's nothing to gain by trying to like tie their hands.
Yeah. Well, the fact that you're a songwriter and that you are, an arranger and a creator and a guitar player, have you ever thought about, and granted, I could have missed this, but have you ever thought about bringing other guitar players and songwriters into your world, or do you strictly want to bring in the supplements to what you don't do?
Well, that's what I've done on this newest EP, is some of the collaborations with Cal from Viliarta and Chris Wiseman from Currents and Shadow of Intent was they helped actually with some of the writing of the guitar parts.
Nice.
And so that's something I've never done before. Nice. So that was new territory for me on this album. And it worked out awesome. It was really fun to just take what they had come up with and give it my own twist and kind of really kickstart me in different directions that I wouldn't think of. So that was the idea there.
That's cool. I kind of knew that, but I had to ask for my audience.
Yeah.
I should say I knew that. When it comes to collaborations, do you have a dream collab? Anything that's coming up that you've already set up that we don't necessarily have all the info on? Sneak peek.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots. There's so much great stuff happening, and I've been able to do a lot with some of my favorite artists. So I'm very thankful for that. Like some of my favorite people, but there's a long list, and
gotcha.
I'm not at that stage yet in the writing because, like I told you, it's kind of one of the later things once the songs are pretty coalesced to get the guest stars in. So I'm not at that point with the new material. I'm still kind of a few steps away from that, but I've got my list that I keep and that I always keep adding to. So, we'll see. It'll be a surprise.
Nice. Well, I will tell you, man, I mean, before I let you go, I have to say this. I can't apologize for anything today. I get it. I'm praising you a lot, but the material is incredible. And I know it's a lot of hyperbole going on right now, but it's powerful. It's abrupt. It's unrelenting. It's gorgeous. It's just so different. And I hear so much stuff, and I can actually see my audience right now rolling their eyes saying he says this all the time, but I fall in love with things and I get passionate and I want everybody to know about it. And it doesn't mean I'm going to fall out of love with your material soon. It just means that once I'm in, right? You've won me over because you had the courage to do it. And so, I mean, I just really admire you, Sacha, and I admire what I hear. And I love that music has, the world has gotten so small with the internet. There's some things that really suck about that. But I mean, here we are today, dude. We're talking. I didn't know you until, 45 minutes ago. I mean, I get it. We're only mild acquaintances at the moment, but I love the fact that we're connecting and we get to talk about something that we're both equally passionate about. So my last question to you is, where do you want to take this? How has metal evolved, or how has music evolved for you, and where do you plan on going with it from here? Can you summarize that for me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, part of that is a question mark, and things develop as they go. Yeah. But I can tell you, I'm always working on new material, obviously, and it's going to be along the same direction as Vacua. It's going to still be heavy and dark. That hasn't really changed.
Good. I love that idea. I'm glad you said that. That makes me happy.
But it's going to be different too. I think I'm just going in a direction that's a little bit less synthetic this time. I think that's something I've wanted to experiment with, is more organic tones and more like real instrument samples, like real strings and real stringed instruments and real choirs and stuff like that. And there's been some of that in the past as well, but I think I'm kind of leaning more into that organic darkness versus like a robotic or a technical thing, which I've been kind of doing the whole time.
Nice. So Devin Townsend 2.0.
Maybe, yeah, but like in a darker way, like,
yeah, I get you.
Not a nice organic, but almost like a foreboding forest or something.
Good. Well, I know you said you can't imagine taking this out on the road, and I mean, I certainly understand why that might be almost impossible to do. But I would hope that as you increase your footprint, that maybe someday, somehow, you can do a one-off show at a festival or something. And dude, if you do, just please email me and I will fly there, because I want to see this live. So, that's it. That's it for my praise today. But again, I want to thank you so much for being here. This is fantastic. I love the idea of turning my listeners onto something new and inviting and challenging. And if there's anything I could say to you, really, Sacha, is just, man, please, please, please keep going. Don't stop. And thank you for being part of my musical growth in life today. It's been utterly, utterly fantastic.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And, it's great to hear when someone connects with it. So thanks for reaching out. Great to connect with you.